leader and assert myself on a very young team. And that's what Willie Taggart, oh, by the way, a former quarterback, told him is necessary. Set the tempo and the tone, and personally, it was all the frustrations from a year ago that just got let out in one play, and it just happened to be the first play of the entire 2017 campaign.
Darian McNeil on the fly sweep, got a great block on the edge, and he turns the corner for a first down. 5'9" freshman from Seffner, Florida. He played at Armwood High School, which has put out some NFL products like running back Matt Jones, defensive back Leon McQuay, and some others.
I played with a bunch of kids from Armwood in college, and there's a different swagger that you expect to play. You want the ball in your hands, and he's a former quarterback as well.
Alley chucks it, far side, catch made in front of the Ducks sideline. And stepping out of bounds with a catch, Alex Ofadale. Limited availability during the spring and also summer camp because of a broken bone in his foot. In fact, he's just putting his cleats back on. He was working mostly in sneakers through the offseason. Second down 2. That run stuffs. We got talking about Taylor Alley a little bit. Former walk-on, now a fifth-year Duck. He married his fiancee Rachel this August, but because training camp was expanded because two-a-days were taken away, no time for a honeymoon. It's going to have to wait. Joined the wide receiver group this offseason, but when Terry Wilson and Travis Johnson transferred, back he came.
And I think his role is going to be huge, and it has been already. I mean, keep in mind, he's from the same high school as Justin Herbert, meaning he gets what it's like to be in a bubble. I mean, this is a guy who played meaningful snaps at the quarterback position just over a year ago. And why I say that is because in the meeting room, as a quarterback, as a starting quarterback at every institution, but specifically when all eyes are on you, when you're from that community, you need somebody to talk to. You need an outlet. And I think when you're looking at Taylor Alley and then more specifically Marcus Arroyo, the quarterback's coach.
How about that throwback? Brooks James with nothing but twilight inside the 30. Keep that thought going, Yogi, because it's a good one.
But what a play, too, by Taylor Alley. You know, the standard set, calmness in the pocket, and it's taught from the quarterback's coach, Marcus Arroyo. Marcus Arroyo also started as a freshman when he was at San Jose State. He's got an incredible career. He called plays at a young age in the National Football League, tutored by Jeff Tedford. So he's been in spotlights in pressure-type situations.
What a block Brooks James got. And shaken up after he threw it. Ofadale gave up his body to get Brooks some extra yards. Ofadale, one of the country's most sought-after receiver recruits in 2015.
Clean, crack back.
Jordan Walker, the linebacker, is who he ran into on the other end.
Looks like the trainers are smiling a little bit, so hopefully that's a good sign.
As you see Brooks James operating here in the fourth quarter, I'm reminded that there are a trio of freshman backs on the depth chart. Whether or not we see them this season, given what's ahead of them, who knows. But Cyrus Habibi-Likio from St. Francis High School in the Bay Area, C.J. Verdell, Darian Felix. The next wave of Oregon back is waiting in the wings.
Yeah, and even Dimitri Birch. I mean, he came in as a quarterback coming out of the state of Florida as well. Who knows where he ends up as an athlete, but that's why I think this thing is going to go quickly for Willie Taggart in turn. You know, when you look at the NFL and you're there every Sunday, you're known for your quarterback. That's the face of it. In college, you're known as the head coach, right? The Urban Meyer, the Nick Sabans. Here at Oregon, I think you're known for the brand. And it's a brand that's got great ties around the country, specifically in South Florida. The recruiting class, depending upon which surface you look at, has Oregon's 2018 class, the #1 in the country, not just in the Pac-12 conference. So I think this brand is going to be so hot with the young players that we're seeing tonight, kicking the thing off in the Willie Taggart era.
We talked about the staff. Not only can they develop the group that's here, but they are renowned for their recruiting prowess.
I mean, you can go up and down that roster. I mean, Joe Salavea, you know, their defensive line coach, very unique in terms of his relationships around the country, how he recruits. Obviously, Jim Leavitt and his reputation. Keith Haywood, I mean, he's been all over the Pac-12. You know, he played at Oregon State, coached at SC, coached at UW. They've got relationships everywhere. And then, of course, the ties and the reputation of Willie Taggart in the state of Florida. Marcus Arroyo young, the energy he has. He's got multiple, I think, future head coaches on this staff.
Bowling his way down inside the 10. Brooks James with another solid carry. Keep talking about Marcus Arroyo, the quarterback coach and co-offensive coordinator, kind of tying it back to Taylor Alley in his role. Arroyo says that he just couldn't ask for a better sounding board for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I mean, they have so many unique discussions away from the game of football, and every quarterback goes through these moments, whether you're a Heisman winner, whether you're the backup. You know, when you're in that spotlight, all eyes are on you, and the quarterback's the only one that feels the pressure like the head coach. So to have a guy like Marcus Arroyo who's played the position, called plays in the NFL with tons of pressure on him. Remember, that was the year that Jeff Tedford had to take a leave of absence due to health reasons. All of a sudden, he's calling plays in his early 30s for a team in Tampa Bay. I mean, he's seen a ton. So just that perspective at the position with the pressures around it, with Justin Herbert being such a star in this community, I think is vital, and it's that combination with Taylor Alley, which is going to be huge as this thing just continues to grow, and the pressure will continue to mount, specifically for a young man who grew up right down the road.
You asked Arroyo for a brief description of his offensive philosophy. He said multiple, he said fast, and oh, by the way, physical. I think we've seen a pretty good sampling of all three tonight. Brooks James getting some work here in the fourth quarter, and he's down after that first down and goal carry. Looks like cramp work, and let's hope it is.
You know, I really have enjoyed coming up here for training camp. You know, when you go on the practice field, they have this sign that says, blame no one, make no excuses, do something. As an athlete, all you want is opportunity. I mean, that's all you've ever wanted as a job. You know, give me my shot, give me my reps, and this staff has done that with a variety of these young players. Okay, nobody has a job yet when they showed up. You had to earn it. You had to earn it in winter conditioning. You had to earn it in spring ball. Justin Herbert, he had to earn it in training camp. And when given the keys to the car, all of a sudden their confidence grows. And what Willie Taggart did, which to me was one of the more impressive things, is he made sure that he developed the bond between these players. He said, when I got here, guys weren't hanging out at the facility. I had to make sure that we were around each other. So now they have 3 dinners per week, even in the offseason among the team. And in each one of them, somebody needs to stand up and say something that's going on in the world, something they've learned and shared, and just to make sure that everybody's talking to everybody, because there was such a bad taste after last season's record and how it finished. Obviously, the change in coaching staff that needs to come in and build the morale before you to build the X's and O's.
Alley dances in. Fourth rushing touchdown of his career. The flag down across the field at the 1-yard line.
"76 points. And that'll make Dane Altman fired up.
Good call. The last time Oregon scored 70.
After the play, unsportsmanlike conduct on the offense, number 86. The penalty will be enforced on the kickoff. That's 86 first unsportsmanlike of the game.
Brendan Schooler, 76 points, a Ducks modern era record. 72 twice previously. School record for points, I'm told, courtesy of Ryan McGrady. A cool 115 against Puget Sound in the great year of 1910. Those Webfoots could score some points. Inside of 7 to go here, and 77 on the board. Highlighting some of the individual efforts in all three phases for the Ducks tonight. Benoit running the football, Brooks James in the kick return game, and Troy Dye on defense. A few more with Herbert, Freeman, and Nelson offensively.
And that's kind of how you draw it up. You need your stars to do something and make plays and show up in big games. And as you see this team, what I like is the fans have bought in. There's still dancing on the sideline, even though you got 77 points.
We heard about Justin Herbert walking around with his shirt off all off season. I'm not sure that that particular gentleman was putting in the same work. Back to Mike Yam in the studio.
JB, it was to even out the tan, I'm convinced. Gatorade studio update. We'll check back in on Arizona. Northern Arizona, Nick Wilson missed 7 games last season because of injuries. 46 yards, looking healthy here. Wildcats up 14-7 after the first quarter. We're starting the second over on Pac-12 Arizona.
Quite a debate about who the quarterback should be down there in Tucson, but whoever it is tonight and proves to be throughout the season, they need a lot more of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, you go back to teams that have won the division, and even when they won it a couple years ago, you got to run the ball. And for them, their offense is like fast break basketball, and they need a point guard, whether it's Brandon Dawkins, or I think it'll be the guy, Khalil Tate. They got to be able to make instant decisions in that type of system.
As Wallen sprinting to the sideline as he finds Chambers. Here, a first down catch, and it looks like they will move the chains.
It's going to be really fun to see how the South develops, specifically in the state of Arizona. Saw ASU's matchup on the Pac-12 networks on Thursday night. Arizona obviously tonight. And both those teams have the opportunity to start off 3-0 and then kind of see what happens as it keeps moving.
Swing pass at the 40, a stiff arm across the 45. Jay Green making the catch. Here are the recent South champions. It's interesting that you can make the case that Utah's been the most consistent, and they're the only ones that haven't won the league.
Jimmy, the last 3 years, Utah has been in contention for the South title up until week 12. I mean, that's an impressive number in and of itself. So for them, we saw it Thursday night in person. It's about creating explosive chunk plays and converting in the red zone. Tyler Huntley, true sophomore, starting quarterback. They think he can do it with his legs as well as with his arm. And then Darren Carrington had a career night. Think about it, a career night. He had a heck of a career here in this stadium on this team before he was dismissed. They've got as good of opportunities. I think their defensive front seven. I'm excited to watch UCLA tomorrow, but as of now, they're the best one that I've seen thus far early on in the season.
Meantime, here in the north, as the Ducks try to climb back to the top, it's interesting the period in which they attempt to do it. It looks different than it did a decade ago because Washington, of course, made the commitment to go out and get Chris Peterson and update their facilities. Stanford is not going anywhere under David Shaw. And now Washington State is a perennial problem for lots of teams up there in Pullman because of Mike Leach and his quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, Washington State to me is like the one team you just have trouble figuring out. Was there about 10 days ago watching them towards the end of training camp. Their receiving core, as deep as Colorado's is in the South, they're the deepest one in my eyes in the North. And their quarterback, I think he's a first-round draft pick. I mean, he might be the best story in the country. Think about it. He's a walk-on. He's going to be probably, by the end of the season, the all-time leading passer in the entire Pac-12 conference. There's some pretty talented quarterbacks in this conference, as you know, and I'm excited to watch that thing develop there. They get USC the last weekend in September on a Friday night at home. It'll be fun to see what that matchup is like. They get an early conference game in week 3 hosting Oregon State. And then, of course, as you referenced, Stanford next week. They travel to Southern California. Right now, the way SC played today, you'd have to say, well, what if, it can go either way. And it always has the last couple of years in that matchup against the Cardinal.
Lenore nearly with an interception there. Let me ask you this. There's an upper crust of quarterbacks, at least from the Pac-12 and national perspective here in the league, right? The 2 in Washington and the 2 in LA. If you had a Pac-12 championship game to win, who would you want as your quarterback?
Great question. I would take Sam Darnold. And I don't think he's the most gifted passer. I think Josh Rosen is the most gifted passer in the country. I think Luke Falk is probably the most underrated anticipatory passer in the country. I think when you look at Jake Browning, he probably understands the game as well as anybody. But Sam, what can you can't attack him as a defensive coordinator. If you try to get him off of his platform, off his launch point, he's going to do just that. He's going to roll out. He's going to make plays with his legs. If you say, okay, all right, we're going to play coverage like UCLA did, he's going to beat you with his eyes. I mean, he has both of those elements. We saw it in the Rose Bowl as he continues to drop dimes, and he's that guy that can make second, third reaction throws and break the hearts of defensive coordinators, and that's why I'd go with him if I had to choose a guy, but all four gifted.
How far behind is this young man?
I think Justin Herbert and Steven Montez are the next two stars in the Pac-12 conference. It's not this year. I think it's next year for both of those guys. Depends on, if Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or Jake Browning, they're all draft eligible. Depends on what they do, but Justin Herbert is a rising star. Again, he really reminds me of the starting quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, and Joe Flacco.
Browning, Darnold, Falk, and Rosen, the four that we began this conversation with.
I tell you what, the guy I'm most excited to see is the one on the far right, which is Josh Rosen. I can't wait to see that.
And he'll be the last one we get to see on this Labor Day weekend. 4 minutes, 20 seconds left in this fourth period. 77 on the board for the Oregon offense. Closer look at Josh Rosen.
Let's keep in mind, Josh at 15 was dubbed #1 or #2 quarterback in the country. It's he and Ricky Town, who Ricky signed at USC, ended up transferring. Point is, he's been in the spotlight. His first game as a true freshman, goes off against Virginia. Last year, they struggle. He gets hurt, misses the back half of the season. Point is, it was the first time he was able to take a breath in his football career. And I think that's really important to say. We want these quarterbacks to be perfect because we put them on these pedestals. We do it at the Elite 11, I get it. But you have to sometimes just allow them to just be 20 years old for a second and just take a minute and have a different perspective on the game. He's done exactly that. He's got a renewed focus, the mantra being 1% better every day. And I think he and Jed Fish, 10 years in the National Football League, great background in college. And I think when you talk Josh, and even when we talk offensive coordinators in this conference, there's some really unique new names in the Pac-12. Whether you're talking Billy Napier, obviously new faces here at Oregon and down at UCLA.
Brendan Schooler made a catch there. He was just asked to switch sides of the football to help with the numbers at wide receiver, so he's only about 3 weeks into his wide receiver training. Back to the ground on second down. Third and about half the chains left as we tick down to 3 minutes.
What's interesting, Schooler's brother, he's playing on Pac-12 networks in Arizona right now. He's always playing linebacker for Rich Rodriguez as a true freshman.
Game coming up on the network. We'll send you down to Tucson, NAU, and the Wildcats. Looking to complete a perfect day for Pac-12 football.
How great is it, too, to have football back, man? I mean, doesn't really get any better than this.
Thankfully, it never goes away on Pac-12 Network and Pac-12.com. McNeil on the sweep, cuts it inside. Kate Scott standing by in Tucson with that one. Glenn Parker, her partner. Debut game of 2017 for Rich Rod and his Cats. Well, we know this receiving core is inexperienced when you take Charles Nelson out of the equation, but tonight proved I think they've got plenty of weapons, especially when you include the tight end package led by Jacob Breland.
Their challenge will be, and they're going to see it next week, and they're going to see some man coverage. Now, they're going up against a 3-4 defense in Nebraska, different than what they previously had with Mark Banker, who the state knows very well as defensive coordinator at Oregon State for a long time, was there, is no longer at Nebraska, but they're going to see some press coverage, and that's what you want to see. You want to see if these young wideouts, how do they do? On an 11-yard route, on 3rd and 10, do they get 11 yards or do they get 9 yards? I mean, those are little details they're going to want to focus on for these wideouts as they continue to develop.
I'm curious to see if Nebraska can tackle Royce Freeman. Here's what some of the voices around the conference have to say.
The most physically imposing ball carriers in all of college football.
It's like a tank.
Can tote the rock. A beast. One of the best running backs in the league. Someone that we're going to have to look out for this year.
Royce Freeman down the sideline. Touchdown, Oregon.
150 yards on 23 carries tonight, so that's 6.5 per. 4 touchdowns for Royce, a long of 28, part of a 348-yard rushing effort for the Oregon offense.
And you got to really impress with this offensive line. I mean, you have a beast like that running behind you. You got depth at the running back position, so you're going to have fresh legs all season long, at least you'd like to think so. And this O-line's real. I mean, you got an NFL body at left tackle and Tyrell Crosby. You got players who have a ton of experience across the rest of the offensive line. Jake Hansen, I think he's a big-time center, making all the checks at the line of scrimmage. I think they're going to be able to run the ball on a lot of teams they're going to play. The challenge will be the three throws you need to make on a critical down and distance, a spot throw. Can that receiver get open if it's not Charles Nelson? What's Dylan Mitchell really like? What's the rest of this young crop of wideouts, Johnny Johnson, going to be really like when he faces a fifth-year senior corner who's got extremely long arms and physical at the line of scrimmage? That's going to be the fun part in the growth of this team and this young roster.
Mitchell enjoying the final seconds of this Week 1 opener as they put the hammer down on Southern Utah. Contested throw there, and between two ducks, it's Jarloose incomplete, intended for Cameron Chambers. Billy Gibson closing on the play from his safety spot. And Ty Griffin with him, the corner in coverage. Just going back to the Oregon center, Jake Hansen, for a minute. He was Pro Football Focus College's highest graded Duck in 2016, all conference. And going back to the offensive coordinator, Arroyo, he's the engine. He's where it all starts, in the passing game and in the running game. Shane Lemieux, Jake Pisarcik, Calvin Throckmorton, some of the other names along that offensive line that you wanted to shout out.
And I think a huge part of that is Mario Cristobal. I mean, what a unique background. Former head coach, been in Alabama the last 4 years. Has had numerous NFL players come out. And, when we went to practice, literally just went over to his drills and just listened. I remember doing it in spring.